The Alpha King arrived too late to save his mother, until the rejected Omega changed everything. Kale Ashgrove had known since childhood that he was meant to rule. He was the son of the Ashgrove Pack, the strongest and largest wolf territory in the northern lands. From the time he could walk, he was trained to be strong, to be feared, and to never show weakness. The elders of his pack believed that emotions made a leader soft, and so Kale learned early to hide whatever he felt behind a calm, hard face. But there was one person who always saw through that mask. His mother, Queen Lyra, was the only one who could make him laugh, the only one who hugged him without expecting anything in return. She used to tell him that a true king ruled with his heart, not just his strength. Kale loved her more than he loved his own future crown. When Kale was 25, his mother became sick. At first, it seemed like a simple fever, when her strength began to fade, day by day, and no healer in the kingdom could explain why. They called it a slow poison from wolfsbane, a plant that could weaken even the strongest wolf if it built up in the body. Kale refused to accept that his mother would simply waste away. He believed there had to be a cure somewhere, in some forgotten village or ancient pack, and he was determined to find it. For 3 years, Kale left the comfort of his palace again and again, chasing every rumor of a healer who might know a secret cure. He crossed frozen mountains and walked through dangerous forests. He ignored his duties as future Alpha King. He even pushed away the pack members who tried to warn him that his mother needed him at home, not searching in faraway lands. He believed that saving her life mattered more than anything else, even his own place on the throne. While Kale searched the world outside, life inside the palace continued in its own quiet way. In the lowest levels of the healing wing, an Omega named Wren Sutter spent her days caring for the sick. Omegas were seen as the weakest rank among wolves, gentle and easily overlooked by nobles who barely noticed they existed. Wren had once been chosen as a future mate by a proud young wolf from a neighboring pack, but he had rejected her in front of everyone, saying an Omega was not good enough to stand beside him. After that day, most of the pack treated her as if she were invisible. She stopped expecting kindness from anyone. Wren found comfort in her work instead. She learned about herbs, illnesses, and the body's slow signs of sickness from the older healers, and she treated every patient with the same care, whether they were a noble or a servant. She never imagined that her quiet life would one day cross paths with the future Alpha King. Queen Lyra grew weaker with each passing season. The healers in the main hall tried remedy after remedy, but nothing worked. Only Wren, working quietly in the healing wing, began to notice something strange. The queen's symptoms did not match ordinary wolfsbane poisoning. The weakness came and went in patterns, worse after certain meals, better after others. Wren wanted to speak up, but she was young, unimportant, and afraid no one would listen to an Omega's opinion over the word of the head healer. She kept her thoughts locked away, hoping someone with more authority would notice what she saw. No one did. On a cold winter morning, word reached Kale that his mother's condition had turned for the worse. He rode for 3 days without stopping, pushing his exhausted body past its limits, praying he would arrive in time. When he finally reached the palace gates, his legs could barely carry him up the stairs to her chambers. He burst through the doors, calling her name. He was too late. Queen Lyra had passed away only hours before he arrived, surrounded by healers who could do nothing more for her. Sirendaha. Kale stood frozen in the doorway, staring at his mother's still form, unable to accept what his eyes were telling him. 3 years of searching, 3 years of sacrifice, and he had still failed her in the end. The guilt crushed him harder than any physical wound ever could. He did not leave her side that night. He sat on the cold floor beside her bed, refusing food, refusing comfort, refusing to speak to anyone who came to check on him. The strong, controlled alpha heir the pack had always known seemed to disappear, replaced by a grieving son who could not stop blaming himself. It was deep into the night when Wren entered the healing wing to check on the herbs stored there, not expecting to find anyone else awake. She saw Kale sitting alone in the shadows, his broad shoulders shaking silently. Every instinct told her to quietly leave and let him grieve in peace, since speaking to the future Alpha King uninvited was something an Omega simply did not do. But something in his defeated posture reminded her of her own loneliest nights, and she found she could not simply walk away. She sat down a respectful distance from him, not saying a word at first. After a long silence, she gently said that she was sorry for his loss. Cale did not respond right away. When he finally looked at her, his eyes were red and hollow, and he asked her, almost bitterly, what she could possibly understand about loss. Ren did not flinch from the question. She told him quietly that she had spent months noticing strange patterns in his mother's illness, patterns that never matched simple wolfsbane poisoning. She admitted she had been too afraid to speak up before, afraid no one would believe an Omega over the senior healers. Cale's grief sharpened into something else as he listened, a slow burning suspicion he had never let himself consider. He asked her to explain everything she had seen. Ren spoke carefully, describing how the queen's weakness grew worse after certain meals prepared by specific hands, and how the poison seemed to build up slowly rather than strike all at once, as if someone had planned it that way over a very long time. She had read enough about rare toxic herbs to know that some plants could imitate the appearance of wolfsbane poisoning while working through the body in a slower, more deliberate manner. Cale felt something cold and furious settle inside him. If Ren was right, his mother had not simply fallen ill. She had been poisoned, carefully and cruelly, by someone who had access to her meals and her private chambers, someone close to the throne. He asked Ren if she would help him find the truth. It was an unusual request, an Alpha heir asking an Omega for help, something that broke every rule of the pack's rigid hierarchy. But grief had stripped away Cale's pride, and in that moment, all he cared about was justice for his mother. Ren agreed, though a small, guarded part of her expected him to change his mind and dismiss her once his sorrow passed, just as her old intended mate had dismissed her feelings so easily. Over the following weeks, Cale and Ren worked together in secret. Ren carefully reviewed old healing records, matching the timing of the queen's worsening symptoms to the kitchen staff and servants who had prepared her meals. Cale used his authority quietly, questioning trusted guards and staff without revealing exactly what they were searching for, careful not to alert whoever was responsible. Slowly, a troubling pattern emerged. One name kept appearing close to every worsening episode: Bram Voss, Cale's most trusted advisor and childhood friend. Bram had grown up alongside Cale, had fought beside him, and had always been treated like family within the palace. The idea that Bram could be responsible felt impossible to accept. Cale struggled with this discovery more than he expected. Bram had been at his side through every hard season, including offering comfort after Lyra first fell ill. But Ren gently reminded him that grief could not be allowed to cloud the search for truth, no matter how painful that truth might be. She urged him to look at the evidence honestly, instead of trusting old loyalty alone. With careful planning, Cale arranged a private meeting with Bram, using the excuse of discussing pack matters. During their conversation, Cale mentioned small, specific details about the poisoning pattern that only someone deeply involved could have known. He watched Bram's composed expression crack for just a moment, a flash of panic, quickly hidden, but not quick enough. Confronted directly, Bram finally admitted the truth. He believed the Ashgrove bloodline had grown weak under Lyra's gentle influence, and he wanted to slowly remove her so that he could guide Cale toward a harsher, more ruthless style of leadership, one he believed would make the pack stronger. He had poisoned the queen a little at a time, believing no one would notice until it was too late to trace it back to him. Cale's anger in that moment was colder and sharper than anything he had felt during his years of searching for a cure. But rather than lashing out with violence, he made a firm decision, guided in part by Ren's steady presence beside him. Bram was stripped of his title and permanently exiled from Ashgrove territory, forced to leave everything he had once been trusted with behind. Cale refused to let his mother's death be answered with more needless bloodshed, choosing justice over vengeance. With the truth finally uncovered, Cale felt a strange mixture of relief and continued sorrow. His mother was still gone, and nothing could change that, but at least she had not been forgotten or dismissed as simply unlucky. Her death had been given the true reckoning it deserved, and the pack had been protected from a hidden threat within its own walls. Throughout this difficult time, Cale found himself drawn to Ren in a way he had never expected. She had shown him more honesty, patience, and quiet courage than anyone else in his life, despite having every reason to stay silent and protect herself from further rejection. He began to notice things about her he had never paid attention to before: the gentle way she cared for every patient, the quiet strength behind her calm expression, the steady kindness she offered even to those who had never valued her. One evening, as they sat together in the healing wing reviewing old records one final time, Cale found himself simply looking at her instead of the papers between them. Ren caught his gaze and asked, with her usual quiet honesty, what was wrong. Cale admitted that he did not know how he could have gotten through the last few weeks without her steady presence beside him. It was in that moment that Cale realized something he had somehow missed during all his years of searching and sorrow. He recognized in Ren the same deep, instinctive pull that older wolves spoke of, the mate bond that some wolves are lucky enough to feel toward the one person truly meant for them. He had been too consumed by grief and duty to notice it building quietly between them, day after day. Ren, however, immediately grew guarded when he tried to explain what he felt. She reminded him gently but firmly of what had happened the last time someone from a higher rank had claimed to feel a bond toward her, only to reject her cruelly once others were watching. She told him she could not go through that kind of heartbreak again, especially not from someone who would soon rule the entire pack and answer to its expectations. Cale understood her fear completely, and he did not try to argue or convince her right away. Instead, he showed her through his actions over the following weeks. He asked for her opinion openly during pack meetings regarding healing matters, something no Alpha heir had ever done for an Omega before. He made sure she was treated with proper respect by the very same nobles who had once ignored her. He was patient, never pushing her, allowing her to see for herself that his feelings were genuine and steady, rather than a passing moment born only from grief. Slowly, Ren allowed herself to trust him. She began to believe that perhaps not every powerful wolf would discard her the way her past intended mate had. When Cale finally asked her, in front of the full pack council, to become his true mate and future queen, he made it clear that his request had nothing to do with duty or pity. He told them all plainly that Ren had shown him more courage and honesty than anyone else during the hardest days of his life, and that he intended to rule alongside her, not simply beside a silent partner chosen by tradition. Ren accepted, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes, tears that came not from old pain this time, but from a happiness she had never expected to feel again. Cale Ashgrove was crowned Alpha King not long after, with Ren standing proudly at his side as his queen. Together, they worked to change many of the old, rigid customs that had once dismissed Omegas as lesser members of the pack, ensuring that no one else would be pushed aside and overlooked the way Ren once had been. Cale never stopped missing his mother. There were quiet mornings when the grief still crept back in, moments where he wished more than anything that she could have seen the queen he had finally chosen, but he found comfort in believing that Lyra, who had always taught him to rule with his heart, would have loved Ren just as deeply as he did. In the end, Cale had arrived too late to save the mother who raised him with love and wisdom, but through his darkest grief, he found the one person capable of guiding him back toward hope, justice, and a love more genuine than anything the throne alone could ever offer him.